Good morning and welcome to the last chapter we will cover for compensation management, and it is the epilogue or chapter 15, just talking about some of the current events and challenges beyond COVID-19, but I'm not going to let you get away with not having some COVID-19 comp in the news. So we're going to start by talking about how some large companies who actually offer services to the public right now, these essential workers, have temporarily increased their minimum pay. And, you can think about it as hazard pay during this time. So companies like, CVS, Target, Kroger, Albertsons, places like that. However, for those who, unfortunately, they're having to lay off a lot of employees or having furloughs, but those who are trying to stay open, 19% of them have decreased pay rates and another 21% are considering it. 32% are, of course, delaying or canceling salary increases. Should not be a surprise. 10% are asking for involuntary pay reductions. So I guess they're not asking, they're just doing it. And then another 7% are saying, if you don't want furloughs, we're going to have to take this pay reduction. So then you have incentive pay. Many companies who use incentives, short-term incentives, bonuses, as well as long-term incentives, stock options, things like that, or sales incentives, are looking at this and saying these are definitely going to go down, and probably they'll have to adjust those compensation schemes. Another 25% of companies are freezing executive salaries. That's kind of surprising to me. I would think that that would be a higher number, and it will probably end up being a higher number, but they just haven't made a decision yet. All right, so let's get into some of these challenges, normal time challenges. One of them that the book talks about is a possible increase in the federal minimum wage. And in Blackboard, I've posted a couple of videos that I hope you will find very informative. One of them just talks about what we do in the United States versus what a number of other countries do, which is we depend on politicians to increase our minimum wage, the federal minimum wage. And because we rely on politicians, it hasn't been increased since 2009. And when you go from $7.25, and many people are asking for $15, and if you run up to 15, that's a huge increase and will have a very large impact on a number of employers. So what other countries do is they just tie it to inflation and take it out of the hands of politicians and into the hand of economists. And then this video, of course, it's like a 3-minute video, but it talks more about that. The other one is by an economist, and it is from, I think, like 2015, 2016, but it's still, everything that he says is very, very relevant. And it's these misconceptions, so please watch those. So let's just look at where we are. So in the United States, our minimum wage is $7.25, and there are, many states and cities that are increasing that minimum wage. So it varies from $7.25 up to $20.59. And that $20.59 is at the Los Angeles airport without benefits. Something else that's interesting to think about is in Arkansas. So in Arkansas, they voted in 2018 to start raising the minimum wage from, I think it was $8.75. So this year, starting in January, it's now $10 an hour, and then next January it will go to $11 an hour in Arkansas. So we just need to think about some of the possible ramifications of things like that. So if federal, state, and city minimum wages are different, which one takes precedence? Well, whichever one is the largest. That's the one that needs to be abided by. As an employer, what are some of the options for lowering labor costs if the minimum wage should go to from $7.25 to $15, for example? So what can you do? And let's say it's in a city, or like I was just showing in Arkansas. So the minimum wage in Mississippi is a trick question. We don't have a minimum wage, so we abide by the federal minimum wage. So if you're an employer and you're close to Arkansas, or you're in Arkansas, maybe what you're going to do is you're going to move your location to Mississippi, where it's $7.25. So that's one of the ways that you might be able to lower labor costs. Unfortunately, there may also be layoffs or reducing the number of hours that employers could work. You could invest more in automation because robots don't get paid an hourly wage. So whatever that capital investment is what it is. And then they can work 24/7 other than maintenance. And so that is another reason why many employers will go toward automation. You can also start reducing benefits, because really that's a major issue with a number of these employers, is that with minimum wage, if it goes up more, healthcare is going up more, they're going to have to figure out ways to work the total rewards so that it makes sense for that company. So what are these concerns about of compensation professionals regarding the minimum wage? So it is very challenging if you are in multiple states, multiple cities, and there can be some inequity in what you are paying because of the minimum wage laws. You could have, like in Arkansas, I think it's going to be a really interesting study to see. So if you've got people who have been in their job for a few years and they started out at that $8.75, now maybe they're at $12 an hour, and then next year the minimum wage for somebody brand new starting out coming to that organization is going to make $11 an hour. Maybe I get a little bit of a raise up to $12.50, $13. Well, that's that wage compression. So again, there could be that feeling of inequity. All right. And another one is what I was just talking about, which is that reducing of benefits. Okay, so there are just different tactics that different compensation professionals could use. So the next topic is performance appraisals. And if you need a little refresher from when we talked about performance appraisals early in the semester, this is a really good video. It's again a 3-minute video, just talks about the history of performance appraisals, where we've been and kind of where we are now. So the question is, as we talked about before, do they actually bring value to the organization? Why or why not? And I think it depends on how it's done, right? Because oftentimes these performance appraisals are really just used to look back in time. We're evaluating how you did. Maybe it's tied to actual performance. Maybe it's not, again, depending on how it's done. We're going to use it to establish your pay raise if you get one or not. And that's about it, right? That's it. What would it ideally be used for? Performance. We want to improve performance. So if it's a performance appraisal, let's appraise that performance. Let's actually take that information in the moment, provide great feedback. Let's look to the future, right? How can you be better? How can we make sure that you get to do your job better, which adds benefit to you, it adds benefit to the organization. And that's really what the difference is between what we're talking about in this chapter versus those very specific performance appraisal tools that we talked about earlier, which are about ratings and trait-based systems, and how are they done once a year, and maybe have a midterm check-in. That's it. So this is much more about that feedback and really improving performance. Okay. So I just wanted to share with you a few things that SHRM has put out with the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychologists. So there are basically 3 steps to performance appraisal. You're going to set your goals, you're going to have some form of check-ins, and then the actual evaluation. So in traditional performance appraisals, you start at the top, what is the mission, vision, right? And then it filters down. But what this is saying, let's link it up. What is that mission and vision of this organization? Now let's tie into that. Instead of worrying about everything having to cascade down, let's really, each individual, like ties into what that mission is. Make sure that every single person is focused on achieving the mission of the organization. Also, instead of these annual goals, let's do more frequent short-term objectives. Still very challenging, still meaningful. And again, it can be quarterly. I'm not saying that it has to be, every week you're setting new goals, because that would be obviously really challenging. But let's make it a shorter term, more achievable. Let's focus on it as we're dealing with the economy, right? Things change, okay? Then the progress, monitoring the progress. And again, a very traditional system, you might have a mid-year check-in, you might not. What do you need to do? Let's really help managers to do a much better job with really monitoring performance, providing feedback, doing it while it's happening in the context of work, instead of in a separate meeting, in very formal, written up, right? Let's work on coaching. Much better at actually improving performance. And it really, if you think about even a sports team, what are we doing? It's constantly, right? Let's look at what you're doing. How can you be better? Even during the game, you're always working to get better. And then you evaluate the results. And again, it's very, the traditional systems are very complex, and they are very rigid, and once a year. Let's stop that. Let's make it useful, okay? Really streamline it, really reduce those documentation. That's why people hate it so much, because it's so formal. There's so much work that has to be done, and it doesn't help performance. Again, so let's make it more of this really much more of a coaching phenomenon, okay? And then you're also going to change it from an annual review of the past to let's look to the future. How can we help to make sure that what you're doing, where you're going, is appropriate? And if you are looking to have some sort of a promotion, or you want to get in a different direction, let's work on that together, okay? Okay, so I'm going to end this one here. We're going to get into the next couple of topics and finish up.